Good evening. Tonight we're going to look at the development of Russia and Eastern European kingdoms. The learning objectives for today's um, video lecture are listed here. You can take time to kind of look at it and then go back and see how they connect in if you'd like. We're also going to look at the key concepts, especially unit key concepts 3.1 and 3.2, because what we're going to be mainly focusing on is the interactions and connections between the empires and nomadic groups, empires such as the Byzantine Empire and nomadic groups such as the Mongols, and how they helped shape and develop those empires and kingdoms within Eastern Europe. So first, starting off with one nomadic group that we'll be talking about a little bit later in greater detail in another video lecture, and that's the Vikings. The Viking influence had a massive impact on the development of European culture, especially after the fall of Western Rome. The group that we're going to focus on today, though, are the Zwenden, this red portion over here. So they're the group that end up establishing Kiev, and which then out of them rise the Rus, or the Russians. The Zwenden are also known as the Varangian or the Old Norse. The most famous with the Viking are their Viking ships. The technology of the Viking ships, they were very shallow, which allowed for them to pass down also very shallow waterways, waterways that normal boats could not, and allowing them to get further inland and raid further inland and maneuver through. The leader of the Varangians that helped establish the city of Kiev is Rurik, this guy right here. And they then settle down, establish Kiev as a trading post, and then from there, that trading post becomes the city of Kiev. So after the establishment, because of their location and their close proximity to the Byzantine Empire, you then have the influence of Christianity spreading in. Cyril and Methodius, two brothers from Constantinople, bring Christianity into Kiev. They also help influence the establishment of the Cyrillic alphabet, which we now see as the Russian alphabet. So they bring the religion that then spreads and grows when you have Princess Olga of Kiev converting to Christianity. This is significant because this is a member of the royal family who has a lot of power and influence, who can then also influence her followers to convert to Christianity. And then you have the solidifying of the connection between the Russians and the Byzantines with King Vladimir, who assists the Byzantine emperor in putting down a civil war, and with that is able to marry into the Byzantine royal family. This also helps with the spread of Orthodox Christianity, but it also now allows the Russians to claim lineage to the Byzantine Empire, which is then also why they claim lineage to the Roman Empire. And later on, the Russian leaders would then take the title of Tsar or Caesar. So the Byzantine Empire has a significant impact on both the culture and religion of Russia, and then from there, it builds up and spreads. And then you have the coming in of the Mongols. This is a map of the Mongol Empire. Now, it wasn't a unified empire, but they spread from China all the way into the Middle East. It was the largest empire in the world. But the group that comes in contact and controls what would end up becoming Russia are the Golden Horde. And they were nicknamed the Golden Horde because of their golden tents that they used for shelter. Now they rule over Russia for 240 years, but mainly it's a peaceful rule. They only ask for tribute, and the Russian principalities are able to rule as they want as long as they're paying that tribute. So really, they're just paying the Mongols not to kill them. So, but during this time, you have what's called a Pax Mongolia, similar to the Pax Romana. If you remember when we talked about Rome, where you could travel freely throughout the empire without any threat of being attacked or violence. So there were you pass freely, which then allows for trading ideas and goods, and really brings Russia into the mix when it comes to the trade, especially along the Silk Road, as it's highlighted right here. The Mongol, much like every other rule that we've looked at, the Mongol rule in Russia slowly deteriorates, and then that opens the door for the Russians to then gain independence. And that is done through Ivan the Great. He unifies the Russian principalities and defeats the Mongols. When he comes to power, he takes the power from the boyars, or the Russian upper class. These are the groups that were followers of the Mongols and supporters of the Mongols. So he makes sure that the boyars don't have a whole lot of say, which allows him to maintain or establish power. And he also incorporates and brings back that idea of the Byzantine culture, taking the title of Tsar or Caesar. And there is Ivan III, or Ivan the Great. So he helps establish, and then it is his grandson, Ivan the Terrible, who institutes a more autocratic style of rule, similar to what we saw with the Byzantines and Justinian. Now, Ivan the Terrible is able to centralize power by granting lands to his supporters. So it is a feudal type system. He institutes serfdom, so those serfs are working the land. So the land granted to the nobles come with a ready labor force. And he maintains power through the use of what's called the Oporkoniki, or the agents of terror. These are agents that would ride through in black cloaks through the countryside and make sure that Ivan's rules were being followed. If they caught wind of anyone who was going against Ivan, they would then disappear. Now, Ivan, just a little background on him. His father dies when Ivan is at a very young age, so that then leaves the boyars to maintain power or regain power, and they then begin abusing Ivan. He grows up almost as a prisoner within his own palace, and then he begins to develop very violent tendencies. There are accounts of him trying to see if cats could fly from the belfry, if you catch my drift. There was an instance of, or an account of, Ivan getting in an argument with an Orthodox priest, and he then strapped that priest to a keg of gunpowder and stated that he was going to send him closer to the heavens. So Ivan did not get the title of the Terrible without providing reason for it. But Ivan did also bring in and establish some cultural identity to the Tsars and to Russia. One of them is the building of this famous church. I'll give you an opportunity to guess it. If you can name this church, give you a couple seconds. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. If you guessed the Cathedral of the Intercession of the Virgin on the Moat, you were correct. If you didn't, I'm sorry. I don't know how you didn't get that one. But this church is also later nicknamed St. Basil's. This, as you can see with the architecture, is heavily influenced by many of the cultures around them. I want you to take a moment and look at it and try and think of where we've seen architecture similar to this. and architectural styles. We'll talk about this tomorrow in class. But St. Basil's becomes the symbol of Russia, and it's still identified as very uniquely Russian. It sits today outside of just outside of the Red Square. Now, the other Eastern European states that we're going to just talk about for a moment, the Balkans, Poland, Hungary, and Serbia. Down in here is just a little map to show the mixture and the control of the area by certain groups. The Magyars here, with the mixture of the Huns, help establish Hungary, which we'll look at. But I also want you to draw your attention to the other groups that are in Eastern and Western Europe that end up becoming those kingdoms. And we're also going to look at how religion plays a large role in these states. So starting with Poland, Poland is in a unique situation because they're constantly struggling for independence. They have Russia to the east of them, and they have the Holy Roman Empire to the west. So they are pinned in and constantly guarding their borders against takeover. And it doesn't help that when Queen Jadwiga is appointed at the age of 12 to be the regent of the empire, that the struggle for independence is at an all-time high. Now, it's not good to, as you're struggling for independence, to then publicize that you're now being led by a 12-year-old girl. So what they end up doing is they change Jadwiga's name to Hedwig, a masculine version of Jadwiga. And again, I want you to think about when was the last time we've talked about or other instances in history where women rulers had to change their identity in order to rule for the good of the empire. But the thing about Jadwiga is, even though she's young, she's very headstrong and she's very intelligent, and she's also Catholic, which plays a very large role within the culture of Poland. She then marries Duke Jadwiga, who is 36. She's 12. It's a match made in heaven. But she also converts Lithuanians to Catholicism, and spreads the religion, and then solidifies her power. So now the struggle for independence is no longer necessary because they now are able to maintain power. And with that, she then turns Poland into the most accepting and open and liberal kingdoms within Europe. She helps establish the University of Krakow, which is the first university in Europe. Poland becomes a hotbed for intellectual thought and also trade. And she is accepting everyone of any background. And during this time, you have a persecution of Jews in Western Europe, especially in Spain and the Holy Roman Empire. So those Jews are looking for some sort of place to stay, and Poland opens its doors, which then, again, they're bringing these ideas in and allows Poland to become that cultural center of Europe. It also is the reason why Poland has the largest Jewish population in Europe, and this plays a significant role later on in history that we'll look at. And then with her government, she does give the people a say within her government, the establishment of a diet or legislative body. This now allows the people to have a say with what is happening and occurring, even though she does maintain, or the kings and queens maintain the last say within that government. And another significant impact of Polish history was the defeat of the Mongols by Jan Sobieski. This is Jan down here. He holds off the Mongols in the Ottomans in the Battle of Vienna. This is a significant victory because no one else was able to, or had been able to defeat the Ottomans, especially at this time. The Ottomans were extremely powerful empire, but at the Battle of Vienna. They were able to stop the advancement, being severely outnumbered. And the Battle of Vienna can be compared to the Battle of Tours, which occurs earlier in France, when you have the stopping of the Muslim advancement into Western Europe. And again, just to highlight Krakow in 1492, this is a artist rendition, a woodcut. I want you to take a moment and look at it and then see where you can compare, or you may have seen a picture like this before with similar features, and also the unique features of Krakow. What does it say about the city itself and Poland? Within the Balkans, they're unique because you have a mixture of many different groups, many different ethnicities, many different religions. So you have the Byzantine, Roman Catholic, and Islamic influences. You also have the massive amounts of Slavic groups that are living within this area. So it's always just a melting pot and a hotbed. And these Slavic groups even though they're all Slavs, they don't identify themselves as all Slavic. They identify themselves as unique Slavic groups. This is what makes the Balkans unique, and it also makes the Balkans very volatile. So, and that will play a large role when we look at it later on down the road within history. So some of the groups and kingdoms that were in this area, you have the Hungarians. They are, as stated, they are a mixture when the Magyars move in and settle next to the Huns, who pushed in, as we saw during the fall of Western Rome. They adopt Roman Christianity, and which helps later on when they become part of the Holy Roman Empire. But during the Hungarians, you have, and especially under Andrew II's rule, you have the establishment of what is called the Golden Bull of 1222. Andrew II was living a very extravagant and lavish lifestyle that his nobles did not appreciate. They felt that he was spending too much. So what ended up happening was they forced him to sign the Golden Bull or Edict of 1222, which is very similar to the Magna Carta, which was then later signed by King John of Britain, which places the ruler under the Constitution, which is, again, very, very significant and ahead of its time. They also face invaders. They have the Mongols come in, and then you also have the Ottomans who come into the area and dominate a portion of this area and maintain that power up until the 20th century. And then in Serbia, now Serbia are established Orthodox Christianity, especially under Stefan Dušan. This is Stefan right here. As you can see, heavily Byzantine influence. Stefan claimed to be the emperor of not only Serbia, but of Greece, and he wanted to show the power of his kingdom. They are heavily influenced by the Byzantines, but they are then later overrun by the Turks as the Ottoman Turks are moving into the area. The Turks overrun Serbia, and you have the Battle of Kosovo. Now, unlike Jan Sobieski and the Polish, the Serbs didn't fare very well. Prince Lazar, prior to the battle, gives a very spirited win one for the Gipper speech, stating that it is better to die heroically than to live under the enemy yoke. And he then leads the charge, and everybody's pumped up, and they get slaughtered. It's an embarrassment, but at the same time, it showed the power of the Turks and their ability to move very quickly within warfare, and their techniques within warfare that were very advanced. So the Serbia ends up becoming part of the Ottoman Empire, and again they remain under the Ottoman control until the 20th century. but because of the Ottoman control, it also puts down any tensions among the Slavic groups within this area. So the Ottomans act almost as like a peacekeeper. So last but not least, I just want to pose this question, and you can use these maps and what we just talked about to answer it. But I want you to take a moment and look at it. How did Eastern Europe change from 1346 to 1490? What also stayed the same? As you can see, this area is influenced by many different groups and had many different similar but also different growing or development styles. So moving forward, I want you to think about, where else have we seen very similar ideas used and connections that you can make to what we've seen previously. We'll talk to you tomorrow. Have a great day.